Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another vlog. It has been a while. I think the last vlog was the Badminton vlog, which I didn't put out until about a month after Badminton, so that was quite delayed anyway. However, there's been a lot going on. If you follow us over on Instagram, you'll know that there's been some things going on, and Ozzy hadn't been ridden for a while, was having a bit of a break. I haven't really gone into that much detail as to why that was and what was going on, so I thought this was the best way to do it because there's a lot to talk about. So I'm just sat behind his big fluffy ears right now. So I thought I would start the vlog here and answer some questions that I've had over on Instagram, and also give you guys a bit of an update as to exactly what has been going on with Ozzy. So like I say, if you follow us over on Instagram, you will see that I have put some updates on there about what's been going on. So basically, after Badminton, I stopped riding, and then Ozzy went into the field, lived out for a month, then came in earlier than he was supposed to, but I'll go into detail as to why that was a little bit later. I'm going to try and do it in like a timeline, so to speak. So before he got turned out, we had some investigations done that kind of brought us to a couple of things to deal with. One being ulcers, which he is just about finished treatment for. He's got another month of oral omeprazole and steroids, and then he is on the omega equine Ulcer as well. Oh, there's a rabbit. I think there's a rabbit in the bushes here. Did that scare you? He's like, Mum, there's definitely something there. Oh, nothing like an interactive vlog, eh? I am going to do the rest of this when I get home. I just thought I would do like the intro bit whilst I was on his back, just to, you know, bring Ozzy into the vlog. But yeah, what was I saying? So yes, the ulcers have been treated and still are being treated. I'll talk a bit more about exactly what we've had done, what treatment he's had and how he's responded. And then the second thing that we found was to do with his airway. So Ozzy had what we call a tie-back operation when he was about 2 or 3, which I knew about when I bought him, which basically means that when he whinnies, he sounds like a dinosaur. It's really common in racehorses, but it hadn't caused him any issues at all. However, over Badminton, I did notice that his breathing was a lot heavier, and he seemed to be like noisier than he normally would be. So I thought something wasn't quite right, and that was again another reason for having a bit of a full checkup when Badminton was over and it was time to have a break from eventing and everything. So we had a couple of things, but I'm going to leave this here because I'm riding and I do want to enjoy the rest of this ride. So I'm going to leave it here and I'm going to pick this back up again. Oh, we've got an itch. So inconvenient, eh? Yeah, anyway, I'm going to leave this here, pick it back up when I get home, and then I'm going to talk through exactly what's been going on, what we found, how we've managed it, and then what the plan is moving forward. I am back, although I don't know how effective this is going to be because I've got 2 spaniels who are having a fight. Honestly, whose idea is it to get 2 boys? It's just constant fighting. I say fighting. It's, I don't know what it is. I'm not going to be able to do this whilst I've got these 2 scrapping in the background. Am I? Boys. Winston. Instead I just get attacked as well. Kisses for Mum? No? Oh, yeah, okay, thanks. Can we be quiet? Can we be quiet? Thanks. There's mischief in those eyes, Frodo. Okay. Let me come back to this. Lucky, we'll try this again, although you can see Winston is still lurking in the background, as is Frodo. Oh my god. Right. Lie down. This is so hard. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this because they're just constantly wanting attention. As soon as I start speaking, they just start playing up again. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's just try and see where we get with this. Also, I apologise for the fact that I'm having to like hold my phone with my hand. I don't have a fancy camera and I don't have a tripod or anything, so it's really hard for me to try and film this. I did try and like lie on the bench in front of me, table, but it's too low, and it basically was just looking at my knees, which is not helpful for anyone. So anyway, to carry on from when I started this, I actually started this at the weekend, and it is now Wednesday, so I am a few days behind and wearing something different to what I was wearing on the weekend. But yes, I started this off by basically telling you guys about Ozzy's issues over the last few months. So things first got investigated in November. It was the beginning of November. Like I said in the sort of introduction, I kind of felt like something hadn't been right for a little while. We had some investigations done in the summer. I think it was June, July time, because he just felt like he was a little bit like flat and not very off the leg at times. And he consistently had issues with his weight. He's never been a horse that kind of carries weight. He's always been like on the leaner side, so to speak. So I had spoke to the vets and sort of said, like, can we do some investigations to see what's going on? So the vets came out in the summer and found that he had a little bit of right leg lameness on the hind leg. So we treated that. He had some injections for that. And then he seemed to kind of pick up, so I thought maybe that's all it was. So carried on, the vet advised to carry on. They weren't concerned about anything else. The vet did say to me it might be worth in the future scoping him to see if there was anything going on ulcers wise, to see if it could be his stomach that was causing some issues, but they weren't particularly concerned at the time. So he just sort of said carry on and see what happens. So I did, and like I say, everything was pretty much like back to normal. He was performing well, at events he was, seemed fine. The only thing that kind of didn't improve was his weight. It just seemed like every time we went to an event, he'd come back and he would just look like skinnier, if that makes sense. So we went off to Bicton, and I don't know how to put it. Basically, when we did the roads and tracks, I was a bit concerned. He seemed absolutely fine himself. He didn't eat on the first night, so on the Thursday when we got there, he didn't eat, which I was a bit worried about, obviously, because he normally eats quite well. So then when he came out on dressage day, he looked really like tucked up and really, really skinny. And I didn't enjoy that. But energy-wise, he was fine. He kind of just got on with it. And then cross-country day on the Saturday, he had ate, he'd had his dinner, he'd had his breakfast, and he came out absolutely fine. But when we were doing the roads and tracks, he was like coughing quite a lot. So basically, because he's had a wind operation, I don't want to make this too long because it is just supposed to be a quick update video, but because he's had a wind operation, a tie back, like I said in the introduction, it basically means that part of his airway, and sorry if people know this, but a tie back is essentially where the airway obviously should open on both sides when he breathes in. His had collapsed on the right hand side, so he had the operation when he was a youngster to kind of essentially pin the right hand side of his airway back to keep it open. So it meant that it shouldn't really affect him when he's exercising. But I was aware of this when I bought him, and I knew that he was never going to be able to, go and be like a intermediate, advanced, 2-star horse or anything like that because of the wind operation. I knew he was never going to be able to sort of gallop for that amount of time and put his airway under that much kind of strain, which was absolutely fine. That was never something that I was concerned about. But he'd been going absolutely fine, at the 90s and the 100s. And it was just at Bicton, he just felt like, the coughing kind of concerned me. And I just sort of thought, just something's not right. Is it his airway? But, in the D box, his breathing went back to normal. His heart rate did stay up a little bit, and I now wonder if that was because of obviously the fact that he'd been working hard, like breathing wise. But then, I actually thought I maybe not do the the cross country round itself. But then he was like, he was bouncing around, like he was raring to go. And when he went out the start box, he absolutely flew. And he was totally fine afterwards. And then came out on Sunday for show jumping day, and he was full of beans again. So I sort of thought, I know something's not quite right. We'll sort it out when we get home. And he was so full of life and so happy and just, seemed really well in himself. So I wasn't like immediately concerned that there was something going on there and then, but I knew I needed to like look into it a bit further. So as I say, I came back from Bicton and then called the vets out, and they basically did a gastroscope. And whilst they were doing that, obviously passing the tube down, they had a look at his airway. So maybe I'll talk about the ulcers first, because I've got quite a few questions about the ulcers, so I'll address that first. You're just going to have to get used to Winnie being in this video, because he just wants to be cuddled, so when Winnie keeps popping his head up, just ignore it. So basically he was scoped at the beginning of November, and they found grade 3 out of 4 ulcers, and they were basically in the top part of his stomach and the bottom part of his stomach, and some of the ones towards the bottom of his stomach were quite angry. So from then on, we then commenced the omeprazole injections. He had one every week, and that went on for 6 weeks. Then he got re-scoped, and the ulcers in the top part of his stomach had gone, and everything had healed up nicely, but the ones in the bottom of his stomach were still there. They definitely had calmed down, but they were still there. So during this time, the vet had said to me, you could continue riding, like a couple of times a week. Obviously don't do anything strenuous. But then equally he said, obviously turnout was really important. So I just made the decision that the best thing to do was to just turn him away and let him live in the field and just be a horse, and just completely like switch off and relax and just enjoy doing nothing, basically. So that's what I did. Turned him out. He went out for, I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks. And then if anyone follows me on Instagram, you'll know back in September he had like a cut in the middle of his chest, which happened in the field. No idea how he did it. It healed up absolutely fine, but then in the exact same spot where that was, he developed a big sort of like abscess. So we noticed this huge ball on his chest. I might put some pictures in, depends on how squeamish people are, but I'll maybe put some pictures in what it looked like before. So he developed this really big ball. It was like a water balloon, like between his front legs on his chest. And then so he had to come in for that, and then that was drained, and then he was on like painkillers and antibiotics for a while. So that was kind of the end of his time living out, because he needed to be in, because obviously infection risk and various other things. So he stayed in after that, and then he actually moved into an amazing space at the yard. Really, really fortunate. They've got like a sort of a barn that's sectioned off into like stables. So he was able to go into there, and it was almost like in his head he was still living out, because he's got so much space and he can just see out and see his friends and everything. So he was just really, really happy to be in there, which I was chuffed about, considering he couldn't have turnout. So that was that. And then he got re-scoped after, as I say, the 6 weeks. Those ulcers in the bottom of his stomach were still there. So then the vets came back and said to increase the frequency of the injections. So then he got an injection once every 5 days, up until the point that he'd had 10 injections in total. Then the injections stopped, and then during this time he was on the sulcrafate. I don't know if I ever pronounced that correctly, but he was on that as well. So then once the injections finished, the vet sort of said the next thing would be to give him like oral omeprazole, which is normally done with a syringe, but he's not a big fan of like worming. So we thought the best thing to do would be to give it as a powder form, so a bit like a supplement. So he started that, I think pretty much just last week, and then he's on that and steroids and the sulcrafate, and he's on a ulcer supplement from Omega Equine as well. So he's doing all of that until the end of January, and then he'll be re-scoped again when, fingers crossed, the ulcers will have all gone. But we were told to start riding again in the new year, which was fantastic, because he hadn't been ridden since the end of October. So we had all of November and all of December off. I started riding a couple of weeks ago, and just basic stuff, because he's lost his fitness, and just really simple, like 15-20 minutes in the school, bit of lunging, bit of pulls, and then we've got gallops on site as well, so we can kind of walk around the gallops and just pick it up slowly to trot and canter. So that's what we've been doing. But question wise, on Instagram I put up like a question box and I got asked quite a few questions. So one of them was, when did you suspect that something was wrong? And yeah, I think I've kind of already covered that. I think it was sort of in the summer of last year that things just started to feel a bit like there was nothing pinpoint. Like Ozzy never had any of the classic signs of ulcers, so in that sense, you know, I've not seen any sort of classic ulcer signs. But yeah, just the fact that he was kind of a little bit like less responsive to the leg, he was a bit more picky with his food, and that was about it. There was nothing else. So that was kind of when I first noticed. And then a few people have asked me as well what his feed is. So the vet basically said that he couldn't have any sort of feed with any like cereals in it, because that can have an adverse effect on ulcers. So he's currently being fed Saracen, Equidual and Relieve, and then just a sort of Alpha A chaff. And then obviously he has his supplements, and then all of his food has to be oily. So he has a cup of like just vegetable oil in every feed that he has as well. So that's what he's being fed. And then I got asked a lot about like what his regime is. So I think I've kind of covered that as well. So he was on like field livery for a couple of months, then he came back in when he had the cyst on his chest. And then he's been in since then, and we are riding kind of like, well, he's been exercised three or four times a week, so nothing too crazy. And that's basically 3 ridden sessions and then 1 lunging session. So that is that. I don't think there's any more questions about the ulcers, so I'll move on and answer some more questions. So before I get into the stuff about his airway, I'll answer some of the questions that I got asked. So one of them, which is funny because I think I've answered this loads, but then again I've answered it on Instagram and not really here on YouTube. So how big is Ozzy, how old is he, and what breed is he? So Ozzy is 18.3, he is an absolute giant. He is 12, and breeding wise he is Swedish warm blood crossed with KWPN, but there is some Irish draft somewhere down the line given the fact that he's an absolute giant. How did I get into riding? Do you know, it's a funny question because like none of my family are horsey at all. My parents have never ridden or been around horses. Like, it's just me. I think it was just when I was a kid, I did like gymnastics and ballet, and then horse riding was just like a thing. My gran actually adopted me horses from Red Wings Horse Sanctuary when I was a kid. And I just loved everything about horses. So I started having lessons when I was about 9. And then it just became an obsession from there. I didn't actually buy my first horse until I was 20, how old was I, 24, 25? Once I was earning my own money and could buy it myself. But I had like a loan horse when I was 14, and I had him for a few years, and then I went to uni and then started working, and then once I saved up the money I was just desperate to buy my own horse, so I did that. And then I had her, so I had Annie first, then I had Ruby, and then Ozzy. So yeah, just became an obsession from a young age, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of us out there. Goals for 2025. I'm going to come back to that when I talk about his wind issue, because that kind of, what's the word, that dictates almost like what we can and can't do, so I'll come back to that one. And then a lot of people asked me about how I got to know Ellie and Lucinda Fredericks and how I got Ellie to ride Ozzy. So basically I am really, really fortunate to be sponsored by Husk, and in December 2023, Louise, who owns Husk, organised for me to go to Lucinda's for a day to have some lessons. And I mean, I was absolutely like starstruck. I was so nervous, just didn't know what to expect. I mean, I'd followed Lucinda for years, and I'd followed Ellie for a good couple of years on social media and that, and was just totally in awe of her riding. So I went there in December 23, and it was the most amazing experience. And then I've been back there, I think 3 or 4 times since then. And they're actually really good friends. I am really, really lucky to have Lucinda sort of in my corner when it comes to like training. And she was at Badminton and warmed me up for every round that I did and supported me. The girls from Lucinda's were amazing as well. Liv platted Ozzy for me. Ellie was there with the pep talks as well when I was really nervous and didn't know what I was doing because I'd never done like a 3-day thing before. So they're actually like really good friends. And how did I get Ellie to ride Ozzy? I mean, Lucinda basically was like, let's put Ellie on and see what he can do. And I was just like, oh my God. And then she jumped him like nearly 160. I think is it on one of my shorts on here? I'm not sure, but it's definitely on Instagram. So have a look on Instagram if you've not seen that. It was absolutely incredible. They just both made it look so easy. And then Ellie was just like, yeah, I love him, he's great, like, can I ride him? And then obviously when I broke my knee in the summer last year, Ellie rode him at a few events for me, which was just fantastic. I've like been teary-eyed and actually cried on a few occasions watching Ellie ride Ozzy because yeah, I was just so proud. So yeah, they're fantastic. Like, I've got so much time for them. They're a really, really lovely family, and well, not just Lucinda and Ellie, but like everyone at the yard. They're just one big family, and very, very lucky to call them my friends. I'm actually going there again. I might have already been by the time I actually edit this video, but I'm going this weekend. I'm not taking Ozzy, obviously, but a couple of my friends are going. So I'm going to support them, and I'm going to be riding, I think, one of Ellie's horses, but I'll talk about that another time. So yeah, that's kind of, is that all the questions? Pretty much that's all the questions. So now the difficult conversation, probably. The hardest bit. The ulcers is hard, but the airway stuff is definitely probably hit me the hardest out of everything. So I'll move on to that now. I didn't realise how much my arm was going to ache holding onto this phone for as long as I have done. So I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet, get to the point, and then I'll be able to feel my arm again. So like I say, Ozzy had a wind operation when he was a youngster before I got him. Hadn't caused him any issues. He had been scoped a few times over the last couple of years for various things, and on the occasions that he'd been scoped, it was obviously identified that he had the tie back, which I knew about, obviously. But when they scoped him for the ulcers in November, what they found was the tie back had actually failed. So hence why he'd been making more noise when he was breathing, because essentially his airway was constricted because of the tie back failing. So what that means was they could operate again and repair the tie back, or we just left it. And I had a lot of discussions with the vet and a specialist about what the right thing to do would be, but personally I didn't want to operate on it because I just feel like Ozzy owes me nothing. You know, before I got Ozzy, I'd never done a BE, and my ultimate goal in life was just to do a BE 80, nothing more. And he's given me that, and absolutely boatloads more. So he doesn't owe me anything, and he doesn't need to be put through surgery and the recovery and everything else just so that I can go off and event at a higher level. You know, it's not necessary, and I would never have put him through it. So I'd kind of already said that to the vets anyway. And then they came back and said, because he's already had that surgery, that if he had it again, it would be quite high risk and the recovery could cause problems. He could end up with like aspirational pneumonia, like potentially. And yeah, I was like, no. I think so. Basically the specialist asked my vet how much I loved the horse, and I'd been in tears on multiple occasions about this beforehand to the vet, and he was like, he is her world. And then the specialist just said, well then no, I wouldn't touch him. And I was like, no, you're not. Because he means absolutely everything to me, and I don't even want to think about anything happening to him and him not being around. So that made the decision that there was going to be no surgery, and we just have to manage, you know, what we've got. So what does that mean? basically it means that Ozzy can't really event other than kind of low level, 80s, 90s, that kind of thing. He can't do anything where it's going to put any pressure on his airway, any sort of strenuous exercise that's going to cause him essentially difficulty in breathing, because he's got that narrowing and that constriction. He just wouldn't be able to get the air in. So what it means is that Ozzy is, yes, he can still event. Whether I do is another question, because again, I'm not really sure. That I think I don't know. I'm still a bit up in the air about what I think and what I'm going to do. So I can't really make any decisions at the minute. But yeah, it just means that he can't go novice again. So he's done his one and only novice, but it was absolutely amazing. Him and Ellie were just incredible, and I'll be forever proud of that and what they achieved. And I'll watch the video over and over again and just smile. So yeah, it's not an issue. When I think about what I wanted to do when I got him, and then all of the things that I've achieved that are so far and above that, how could I ever be like upset or, angry that he can't do another novice? Like, it's just, yeah, it's not something that's really came into my head. But yeah, it just means that we've got to kind of take things really steady, see how he goes, see how he feels. He is actually bred from show jumpers, and as you are aware, he's got a huge jump on him. So show jumping could be a new career for him if I wanted to. I don't know, I'm not a massive fan of show jumping, but who knows what's going to happen. The main thing is that he is well, he is happy. He's honestly the happiest I have ever seen him. He's responded so well to the treatment for ulcers. He's just really full of energy, full of life, and just the happiest I've seen him in a long time. And that's really all that matters to me. What else happens is kind of we'll just take it day by day. If I start doing some little jumps with him and he really loves it, because he does love jumping and he is so good at it. So if he does still enjoy it and he wants to jump, then yeah, maybe we'll do a bit of show jumping, maybe we'll do a bit of arena event, and maybe one day we'll go and do another little event. I don't know. I'm just taking each day as it comes. I don't really, I don't need to make any decisions and concrete decisions about what's going to happen next. But yeah, the main thing is that he just can't event at a higher level anymore. We just need to look after him, and like I say, he owes me absolutely nothing. So yeah, but I'm at the point now where I can talk about it, because I think when it all happened in November, it was all such a shock, because it was the ulcers and the airway, and I was so scared and worried, and I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was thinking the worst case scenario, so it was a really tough time. But we're a few months down the line now, and like I say, he's doing so well. He's so happy. We've just had our first canter today on the gallops, and he was really, really excited and really, really happy to be having a canter. He did not want to stay in canter, he just wanted to go. So yeah, it's definitely been the right decision to do what I've done over the last few months and just give him that time, turn him away, get him the treatment, and just bring him back into work slowly. And then, like I say, just take it as it comes, see how he feels, see what he wants to do, see what makes him happy. Because yeah, that's kind of all that matters to me, is him being happy and healthy. So yeah, I hope that answers a lot of the questions that I've had over on Instagram about what's going on with him. I know, like I say, I told people that he had ulcers, but I hadn't told anyone about the airway issues and his tie back failing. So there you go. It's out there now. You all know. Sadly, this is the end of, technically the end of his proper eventing career, but like I say, that's fine. But I appreciate each and every one of you, whether it be here on YouTube or over on Instagram, who has been so lovely, so kind. I've had so many lovely messages and so much support, which, a few years ago just wouldn't happen, because I just didn't have these platforms and I didn't have this amount of support around me. So I'm really grateful to everyone who's asked after Ozzy and asked after me. We are getting there, like slowly but surely we're getting there. And like I say, the main thing is he's happy, he's healthy, I'm happy. Like I can sit on my horse again. And if, you know, that's the end of his proper eventing career, then so be it. Like I'm okay with it now. Like I've dealt with it and now I understand everything, and now, you know, I have a bit more of a plan. And the fact that I can just ride again and just sit there and just have a lovely time sat behind his ears is just everything. So anyway, this is meant to be short and sweet, so I'm gonna go. I'll put in a few pictures at the end, so if you don't want to see a wound, then stop before the end of this. But I'll put in some pictures of his wound, and yeah, I will probably update you again, I don't know, once we have a bit more of a plan. I don't know when that's going to be, but yeah, I'll try and, you know, provide some updates when I've got them. But thank you for watching. I hope this all makes sense. If anybody's got any questions about ulcers, about tie back surgery, anything like that, please just pop them in the comments and I will try my very best to answer them and give you any kind of insights and sort of tips and knowledge as to what I've picked up over the last few months. But yeah, thank you all again for supporting us. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll see you when I see you.